So this might be tough to do, but I want you to try for a moment and imagine that you have a flush draw and you're betting it and you're betting it, and on the river it does not improve and you're just left with king high. I know, can you even imagine such a thing happening? But what do you do with it? Do you bluff it? Do you check it? Let's talk about that today. Good morning, how are we doing today? My name is James Sweeney, aka Split Suit, and today we're going to talk about bluffing, and specifically look at some tips when it comes to bluffing with busted flush draws. So without further ado, let's jump right into it from an example from the Advanced Poker Workbook, and let's flip over to page 177, zoom in real quick, read the prompt at the top. So 5-10 cash game, the button calls your $40 pre-flop open raise, your $90 flop c-bet, and your $270 turn barrel. You go all in on the river for $650 into an $815 pot, and of course here's our busted flush draw, king 7 of clubs, and we totally whiff our club flush draw. River is an overcard with that queen of spades, and this is the range that the solver is giving our opponent as the game tree is set up. So in this situation, if we do decide to fire, we're really not thinking this is for value, right? We're not expecting our opponent's going to call us with 10 high or 8 high or anything like that. So if we bet and we end up getting any action whatsoever, we can expect that we are behind. So that is pretty much a great definition of knowing when you're bluffing versus making any other sort of bet. And overall, there are some aspects of a good profitable bluff that you definitely want to be aware of, not just with busted flush draws, but just in general when we're bluffing. The first few aspects of a good profitable bluff really revolve around the technical aspects of the bet or the bluff overall, which in this situation would be the break-even percentage. How often do you think your opponent's actually going to fold? What the auto profit number is, and if the bet itself is looking to be auto profitable. And these are all aspects that we cover right here on this page, so let's just burn through them together real quick. So first question, what is the break-even percentage of this bet? Well, we just need to look at the size of our bet and the overall reward or the pot we're fighting for. We can use the break-even percentage calculator, very simple and also free spreadsheet. I'll leave a link for this in the description box if you're interested. But our overall risk in this spot is the size of our bet, which is 650. The reward we're fighting for right this moment is 815, and as such the break-even percentage is 44%. And then down below we have 3 different assumptions. So essentially, first one, if we suspect they're only going to give the bet action with 2 pair plus and fold everything else, how's that looking? What if it's just top pair plus, and what if it's any pair or better, and again is going to fold everything else? Then we can look and say, is this going to be an auto profitable bluff? And to do this, we can simply use Flopzilla. So we plug in the range, get this right from the answer key, the overall board right this moment, our king 7 of clubs, and the first question is if they're only going to give action with 2 pair plus. So we just make sure we have the click next to 2 pair or better, so 2 pair sets, and there are no made straights in our opponent's range right this moment. So given that they are continuing 21% of the time, which means they are folding the other 79% of the time, and something is auto profitable if they are folding more often than the prereq break-even percentage. So if they are folding more often than 44%, and of course 79% is higher than that, then yes, this would definitely be an auto profitable bluff. To answer the next question, if you think they're only going to give your bet action with top pair or better, well, we can plug that in right here, so include over pairs and also top pair. Again, they are continuing at 32%, and as such folding the other 68%. 68 is higher than 44, and as such, yes, this would also be a profitable bet in this situation, auto profitable to be specific. And then finally, if you suspect they're only going to give your bet action with any pair or better, so we can include all pairs in this situation, which includes middle pairs, which is all of those Jack X combos. We can also include weak pair, and you notice that at this point they are continuing 87% of the time, only folding 13. 13 is lower than 44, and as such, no, this is not going to be auto profitable in this spot. And I don't know why I turned my caps lock off. That's driving me nuts, so that looks different. Excellent. And we can pull up the answer key real quick, double check we have everything correct. So we have yes for the first one, yes for the second one, and not auto profitable for the third one. Break-even percentage of 44%, and everything looks good so far. So these are the technical aspects of a good and profitable bluff, and you need to understand these things. And honestly, you do a little bit of work and exploration with them, start understanding the break-even percentage of common sizes you tend to use, understanding, hey, is my opponent likely going to be folding often enough if they continue with just top pair, if they continue with like medium pair plus. These are typically kind of common hand strengths that people tend to use when facing a single bet on the river. If you can start to get a general feel for those kind of things, you can definitely in real time say this is likely going to be an auto profitable bluff, or maybe not so much, and as such revert more to checking as opposed to firing a negative EV bluff. But there are some other things that we want to keep in mind as well. For instance, does our bluff look like it could be a real hand, right? Do we have real hands in the situation that would not just bet but would actually shove in this spot? Does it look like we can have things like two pair, or does it look like we have a range that's not going to really have very many strong hands, either based upon the run out or based upon the sizing being used? If it doesn't really look like a very real hand and our opponent is someone who's thinking about what kind of range we might have, that can be very, very problematic. And partially related to this is the concept of multiple bet sizes. If it looks like this is a kind of spot where a 650 bet would actually look a little more bluffy and something like a 300 bet looks like something we would actually bet with for value, that can be very, very problematic because the bigger bet then looks really airy and our opponent could be able to sniff that out. Now, just in general for GTO exploration, multiple bet sizes are a must. Now, it doesn't require that the solver is actually going to utilize all the given sizes in the game tree itself, but for non-simplifications, the game tree must be given multiple sizing options. If you don't give it that, that's going to be problematic in the output. And if the last 15 seconds of me speaking sounded like I was talking a totally different language, make sure to pick up my book GTO Gems, give it a quick read. We go through this exact concept as well as many more. redchippoker.com/gems to pick up your copy today. But anyway, let's get back to it. Another thing we want to think about when it comes to busted flush draws specifically is thinking about any showdown value your hand may or may not have. And if you really pay attention to solver output, you're going to notice that things like ace high flush draws and king high flush draws that miss because they are ace high or king high respectively tend to get checked more often rather than the missed flush draws that are significantly weaker. So something like 7-6 of clubs here would oftentimes get bet by the solver, but a hand like ace x of clubs is more likely to get checked behind. Now, that's not always true. Sometimes the solver will break this, especially if the number of combos for either player gets really, really small in a given subset. But just keep this in mind if you're constantly firing your whiffed ace high and king high flush draws, sometimes those are much better check behinds instead. And to visualize this, we can actually pull up the GTO Plus save file. By the way, this is included as well as all of the GTO Plus save files from the workbook itself. So if you pick up the workbook, you get all of these and you can explore them any way you like. So if we look at the solver output in this situation, notice that the solver is suggesting we do this 72% of the time. And if we really hover in there for those bets, notice that things like king 7 suited, which is specifically our clubs combos, the other combos didn't carry through on the previous streets. The solver is suggesting that all of those get bet. In fact, a lot of these kind of ace x hands are, and kind of the high flush draw hands that just whiffed are actually bets of the situation. However, that may seem to contradict what I just said, but also notice how few combos we're talking about in this spot. We're talking about 11 combinations on the river in this spot total, so that's why this is happening. If these were wider, you're going to tend to see more checks with things like busted ace high and king high flush draws that have some sort of inherent showdown value. And pro tip, if you're interested in going a little bit further with this kind of exploration, is look at a spot where you bet exactly like this spot, and also look at your opponent's suggested continuance based upon the solver output. Notice again, they only have 15 combos, so we're talking about a very, very narrow combo slice going into the river for both players. And if we look at the overall solver suggestion, the calls are in green, the folds are in red, and you notice over on the right that you have pretty much continuance through the toppest side of the middle pair spectrum upward and a fold from everything else. So if you're looking at a spot like this and you're like, I don't think my opponent's actually going to continue with every single middle pair, which of course are going to be those Jack X combinations. Well, if that's the case, mind you, there aren't tons of them, but if your opponent is actually going to overfold them, that can skew this into, hey, your opponent is breaking away from the GTO suggestion, and as such, you can get into more of an exploitative suggestion, assuming they're not going to counter that, and as such, you might be able to find some extra bluffs in this situation because your opponent opponent is not continuing often enough, they're breaking that, they're becoming exploitative and giving you an option to exploit them by, again, bluffing more often. So there you have it. There are some very good tips when it comes to finding more bluffs in your game, especially with busted flush draws. Again, think about the showdown value that you may or may not have, the thickness of combos in both players' ranges on the river. Also think about the sizing, and also understand those technical elements, the break-even percentage, how often your opponent might actually be folding or not folding. Using something like Flopzilla Pro between sessions is going to be extremely helpful for estimating this in real time. And then of course comparing both of those to find auto profit spots, ones where you can bluff a tremendous amount of the time, or at minimum point you in directions where you skip the bluff because it's just not going to be that good at all. If you're interested in doing more exploration just like this, make sure to pick up your copy of the Advanced Poker Workbook today, splitsuit.com/advanced. The workbook comes with every single GTO Plus save file. It also comes with a complete training course, so you know how to set up every single section, you know how to get the correct answers. So if you're like, I don't really know what the heck I should be doing here, don't worry, that course has your back. Again, visit splitsuit.com/advanced or look for the Advanced Poker Workbook on Amazon if you're interested in the paperback. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. Thank you so much for hanging out today. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you have any comments or questions, please do not hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you back shortly with a brand new video. And in the meantime, good luck out there and happy grinding.